Hi, in this video I will discuss a simple fix to reduce the noise coming from the driver board fan of the Flashforge Dreamer. Now before we dive in, here are two shots back to back of the printer before and after the modification I made to my 3D printer. Judge for yourself if the noise reduction, especially in the higher frequencies, would be worth the effort for you. When the printer is in idle mode, while you are for example uploading files or heating up the nozzles, the printer is already making some noise, at least some of which seem to be caused by resonance in the plastic housing of the printer. At first I thought the fan of the main power supply was blowing when the printer was stationary, but it is actually the small fan used for cooling the driver board. This fan is always on from the moment you turn on the printer. Of course, when printing, there are more sound sources like the extruder fans, stepper motors and LMUU bearings, but since all sound sources are contributing to the overall sound pressure level, it does make sense to look at the sources individually. I tried to keep it simple and reduce the noise level of the driver board fan without actually replacing it. It made more sense to me to look at why this small fan was generating so much noise in the first place. I suspected the fan bracket was one of the main culprits. It is directly mounted to the plastic chassis of the printer, allowing the vibrations generated by the fan to be transferred directly into the bottom and side panels of the enclosure. I decided to try some rubber fan mounts to reduce the noise caused by the vibrations of the chassis. Another issue is that only two mounting points are used, causing additional vibration due to the flexing of the fan body. It has to be said that even when you disconnect the fan completely from the printer, it still makes quite some noise, but it sounds far less intrusive than when it's mounted to the chassis. I designed a new bracket and of course used the Dreamer to print this part. I created a solid model of the bracket in Fusion 360. The existing bolts can be used for mounting the new bracket. There are two cavities in the bottom with a hexagon shape sized to accommodate standard M3 nuts. There are now 4 mounting positions for the fan instead of 2. I took some rough dimensions from the rubber fan mounts using calipers to dimension the holes. This is not the best way to do it, but since I do not have any information from the supplier, I decided to start with a slightly underdimensioned hole and modify the dimensions as needed. I added 2 ribs on the sides of the part for additional stiffness. For printing the part I used modified PLA. Since the fan is always on, I do not expect the maximum surface temperature of the material to be exceeded during operation. The larger hole requires support when printing. For this purpose I selected the linear support structure in FlashPrint. The auto support function worked perfectly and placed supports in all of the holes. Since support is not actually needed for the smaller holes, I deleted these manually. The cosmetic quality is not very important for this part, so I used the same extruder and therefore the same material for both the main part and the support material. In the print settings I set the layer height to 180 microns and used a 50% infill. After printing, I removed the largest part of the support structure by hand and finished the part up with a more or less sharp knife. I bought some standard rubber fan mounts at a local electronics store, which only cost me €1.95 for a bag of 8 pieces. The tensile strength and the elongation of this rubber material is really incredible. It's almost impossible to break the material by hand. Now it was time to fit the M3 nuts. They wouldn't go in by hand, so I used a pair of pliers for this. The fit was a bit tight, but at least the nuts will not fall out when trying to mount the bracket. With the first try I found that it was quite hard to pull the conical section through the mounting hole in the fan, so I applied some dishwashing detergent for lubrication. It was also quite difficult to reach the rubber fan mounts with my fingers, so I used a pair of pliers to pull the rubber fan mounts hard enough through the hole for the conical shape to snap into place. The bracket is now done. All that's left is to mount it in the original position and to connect it back to the driver board. The holes with the M3 bolts are at the same distance as the holes in the original bracket, so it should fit without any modifications to the bottom of the printer. I put a link to the CAD model and STL file for the new bracket on my website, uptimefab.com, link in the description below. On the website I also have some more articles on the Flashforge Dreamer. Well, that's it for now. I hope you liked this video. Thanks for watching.